morning, Central Coast, and welcome to Marriage Week. We were just listening to Victorious by Third Day, and I don't know about each of you, but I am beyond thankful that I have a God who is indeed victorious and in all the ways. He victors over our troubles. He is the triumph in our tragedies. The victorious God that we serve is always on guard and ready for our call. He is the one we can call when we need an angel of armies to take on the battle for us. And I'm so thankful for that. This morning, you're tuning into Rhema CC, and I'm your Sunday morning host, Lindy Jones. Last week was Father's Day, and we'd explored the need to celebrate and affirm our dads, but also the men in our little own worlds. Oh my goodness, I'll go back to being going with that. This morning, you're tuning into Rhema CC, and I'm your Sunday morning host, Lindy Jones. Last week was Father's Day, and we'd explored the need to celebrate and affirm our dads, but also the men in our own little worlds too. I really hope you were able to get the chance to do that. This week, as I said earlier, we are celebrating Marriage Week. Some of you might be presenting as one of those cartoon characters as I say that. Your eyes are protruding, love hearts, and sighing a deep sigh of, oh, Marriage Week means love. Some of you may be thinking, what is there to celebrate? Some of you may be thinking, ugh, big deal, being married today is just another day of doing the same thing in and out every day. Regardless of the first thought that you have when we discuss marriage, marriage is a union between two people. And in the Christian context, we celebrate the beauty of a man and woman being united as a beautiful reflection of who God is, with both masculinity and femininity joining together as one. And ultimately, the commitment to see every day together. Today, we're going to explore several aspects of marriage. And not all just the happy, clappy life is a bunch of roses, although I'm always happy to take some of those type marriage conversation. We're going to talk real stuff, the stuff that makes marriage special, the stuff that makes marriage being hard. We'll talk about the journey into marriage and explore the preparation time needed as singles before marriage. We'll talk statistics. I'm sure if some of you are battling with some eyes glazed over as I say those words. Statistics, how boring. Yes, I know they can be, but they can also help us to work out what is working and what needs to be worked on. But more than anything, we'll discuss the gift of marriage that God has designed and given us, and we'll explore ways to ensure it remains of high priority in your life if you are married. We're going to be challenged to revisit our wedding vows and question whether we're really honouring what we committed to on the day we agreed to stick around for good. My husband and I have renewed our wedding vows 3 times since we originally married in 2005. We made a commitment back then, and we revisit those together around every 5 years. Some people may ask why or think the idea is ridiculous, but to us, reaffirming our commitment time and time again is important. Now, when I say that, I need to explain that it hasn't always been about the party or the celebration. At our last renewal, Mike, my husband, had asked a friend from church who has many, many years of experience in ministry to surprise me during church with a renewal of our vows. Another friend came out to find me because I was taking a nappy out to the bin after changing one of our kids. So I was rushed back into the church because they were waiting for me, though I didn't know, and sent straight into an opportunity to affirm my husband and my marriage with the witness of our church family in the background. Life was so normal in that moment, which actually made it more special. When we originally got married back in 2005, my husband and I woke up on a Monday morning, called his dad in the US as we were visiting at the time, and preparing our wedding. But we asked him to marry us later that morning so we could legally get the visa process started. We said our wedding vows in jeans in front of 2 witnesses that I'd only just met, and our 2 eldest girls were playing on the lounge behind us as we spoke our promise of forever to each other. I realised in that moment, though, that we had originally believed saying our wedding vows was purely a legality to lead up to the wedding. What was to follow several weeks later, something much deeper occurred as we spoke. I realised we were both making a promise, and I realised I meant it. The wedding was no longer about the flowers, the pretty dress or celebration. It was about a commitment to each other, and I suddenly acknowledged the weight of what I was doing. And I loved it. And I loved him. When my husband had organised his special church service and our vow renewal a few years ago, it actually felt quite similar to the original time we spoke our words of commitment the first time. and went from real life, the kids, the nappy changes, missing out on what everyone else was doing at church, that type of thing, to in an instant being reminded of a deeper purpose in my life to commit to serve each other and alongside one another, and love through all the tough and triumph stuff. So why wouldn't we do it every opportunity that we get? It was low-key and natural, but it was more than that to us. It was and has always been a way of saying, I'm still here, I still have your back, you're still my top priority, other than my relationship with Christ, and a gift from God himself. So my prayer for you this week, listeners, is that you kick off this Sunday, whether you are married or single. My prayer is that this will be a week to really comprehend and appreciate the beauty and gift of marriage. And more than that, if you are married, I hope you're able to get a real opportunity to spend some quality time with your spouse, a moment to simply say, I love doing life with you, or if you're in a position that those words seem a bit too hard, that your heart will be softened enough to speak the words, I know we're doing it tough, or we have been doing it tough, but I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. Marriage is about commitment. Love is a decision. The two together and the understanding that God ordained marriage as a gift to each of us as individuals is a huge concept to grasp. So incredibly awesome in the true sense of the word. It really does leave us in awe when we start to contemplate and consider the perfect design of marriage. We have plenty to be thankful for. I'm Lindy Jones. We're about to explore marriage together when we come back. But before that, here's Thank God by Point 5. Welcome back. You're listening to Rhema CC. I'm Lindy Jones and I will be sticking around here for the next couple of hours as you begin your Sunday adventures. Today kicks off the beginning of Marriage Week, and what a gift marriage is. Now, I'm not entirely naive, though I wish I could be sometimes. I've lived through enough to know that life doesn't always go to plan. And while reflecting on marriage, I know there are probably some of you out there who struggle with the concept of marriage, either because things haven't gone to plan in your own marriage or because maybe you've never been married before. So I want to use this opportunity to speak to each of you if you fit into these two categories. Firstly, to those of you not married or have never been married, please never disregard your value. Singleness is a gift too. God can use you more freely because you don't have the accountability to another person. And when he says, God, it's time to go in any mission, you're available. Well, reasonably available. You may have to work on commitments like work commitments or other, but ultimately it's your call what you do with that. You can pick up and go if you decide it works for you, and there's no need to consult another person to check that it will work for them too. You are God's, wholly and authentically. And while marriage may be something you desire at a later time, your time as a single person is a gift too. It is a special time for you to connect with God, to work out who he designed you to be, and ultimately become whole in him. Then, if God directs and opens an opportunity romantically and you find yourself headed towards marriage, you have so much more to offer to the other person because you know you are firmly rooted in God's purpose. When we are damaged and never receive proper healing, we're only able to offer another person what we have and are. I learnt this concept about 21 years ago when my ex-husband left me at an inconvenient time. I discussed a little last week, so I don't want to explore it too much today because really it feels like a lifetime ago. But it is relevant in explaining that I fully understand the need to be a whole person with as much healing as possible before bringing the extra emotional baggage into the next avenue of life. This is where I hope to be able to talk to those of you who are currently going through separation or divorce, or those who are newly divorced. And I recognise that this may seem contradictory as we begin celebrating Marriage Week, but I don't want to overlook any personal situation because any one of us can live through the joys of marriage, and we can also live through the heartaches associated with marriage itself or the dream of marriage. I remember walking into a Christian bookstore days after my ex-husband had told me he loved me but had never been in love with me. Well, at least for about 5 of the 7 years we were together. I was confused by this because the way I'd felt about him was based on a commitment to him first, and the feelings tended to fluctuate from time to time. Some days I loved him as a best friend, others as a romantic partner. Other days I gave thanks he'd given me 1 and then 2 babies to love. and ideally raised together. But back to my story at the Christian bookstore. The books that greeted me were How to Have a Happy Marriage, Doing Marriage God's Way, Raising Kids in a Happy Home Together. Now, these weren't the exact titles of the books flashing before me, but they were similar titles and they hurt. I wanted what the books in front of me highlighted. I wanted all the happy memories for my kids. I wanted a spouse who valued me, appreciated me, and would do anything for me. My reality was that my ex-husband was headed out the door and I had no control over what was happening in my life. In that moment, I had to fight everything within me to not walk over and swipe those books off the shelves. My reality didn't meet up with what was in front of me, and I was angry and I was hurt and I didn't know what to do with how I felt. My ex-husband's decisions left me stranded and alone. They left me feeling bewildered for a while, angry with God and angry with the concept of marriage. But in the months following that day, I realised how important it was to not give up on the dream I had seen as a kid for a great marriage. I don't mean I wanted to simply remarry and everything be bliss, because it wouldn't have been if I hadn't done some real soul searching and explored my personal circumstances and the situations surrounding my separation and divorce. But I do mean I needed to take my focus off the hurt that was caused by another and refocus again on how God designed life for us. I watched my parents, the way they loved each other regardless of circumstance, and the way they supported me while leaning into each other. That gave me hope. I looked at other couples at church, though I admit I didn't go to a family service with my kids initially because I didn't know where I fit as a single mother. A young single mother at that. I needed to reboot and reprogram my understanding of marriage again. I needed to see that how God had designed it, not the way I and we had damaged it. I realised that I was the key to my own kids' understanding what healthy and happy households looked like. Whether alone as a mama or married, it was my job to refocus my understanding of marriage and ensure my eldest two girls weren't damaged too much in their understanding that great marriages are out there. If you're listening to this and have walked a similar path, if you've been hurt through separation or divorce, or you're just wondering how to grapple with the concept of marriage for yourself and your kids in your life right now, now is not the time to pull away from the church, from other family members who have healthy marriages or friends who've been able to make life work as a couple. You're not the third wheel. Right now, if this is you, you are a sponge and it's time to start soaking up all the good that can come from marriage. You are not your hurts. While your actions may have resulted in the outcome you're in, you are not too far gone, and there is a God who can walk with you as you confront those actions or behaviours and guide you to make better choices from here on. But if you're like me and your marriage quickly dissolved with little warning or reason really, deal with grief. Absolutely deal with it. Seek professional help if you can too. Dealing well offers more opportunities to heal well. But regardless of the surrounding situations to your heartache, stay connected with those who you know are demonstrating positive relationships and marriages. We can't continue allowing the devil to destroy what is good and God designed. We have to rise up and say, I've been hurt, but God's plan is better. So join me if you're hurting. Let's use this opportunity, this marriage week, to surrender our life plans to Him, the God who designed us and equipped us to do life either as a single person or married. I want to stress here too that two of my two girls, my two eldest daughters from my first marriage, the first today is 22 and has no interest in jumping into a relationship with just anyone. Instead, she is using this time as a single girl to work out who she is, to explore the globe, develop her interest in culture and history. She recently returned from 6 months of studying in Northern Ireland, where she says today that the experience for someone who normally cruises through life with no deep connection to emotion allowed her to truly experience the best of the best and the worst of the worst in emotion. And she learnt more fully that she is God's kid and she yearns to know Him more. She developed a discipline in having real time with God that she otherwise wouldn't have if her life today was marriage and babies. But she's developing tools that will equip her should marriage ever become part of her journey. God is using her singleness to prepare her for whatever he has planned. But he has allowed her to see through the marriages of others what she would desire in her own, if that is part of his plan for her too. I love that she's being so wise in her decision-making and life plan, because his way really is the better way. And if he calls us to marriage, that's an awesome experience. But if he is still using our singleness and teaching us how to experience him more, then that's perfectly perfect too. Wherever we are in life is where he wants us. He simply needs us to be open to appreciating and valuing the way he created us and the gift of marriage from whatever position we are currently looking. Marriage as designed by God is explored many, many times over in Scripture. We'll explore these a little more shortly. But to close this segment of this morning, I think that regardless of whether we are single or married, it's appropriate to consider 1 Corinthians 16:13. Be on your guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous. Be strong. The devil is out to destroy what is good, and for too long we've been allowing it to occur. If we're single, we should give thanks and open ourselves to whatever it is that God has for us. If we are married, we are to give thanks for the gift of another person to walk each day with. And instead of isolating each other, married couples should remember the loneliness experienced by those who aren't married and include or encourage involvement in their lives. Singles should try and support those who are married and stay married by offering opportunities for babysitting if you have time to offer. It's just that, hey, go out together, spend some time together, be grown-ups, not parents for the night. Or if you're financially more stable as a single person, offering to pay for a meal so a couple can just get out and talk. As I've said on numerous occasions, we have an obligation to truly support each other. As one church, we need to act in a way that will support God's design for marriage and family. That starts by understanding and empathizing with where each of us are coming from. Think about that over the next few weeks. Who can you connect with and support in your local church to either encourage a marriage to flourish or support a single person to know they have an incredible value as they either prepare for a future marriage or continue solo life with a call to follow God's lead? You're listening to Rhema CC on this incredible marriage week. I'm Lindy Jones and you're about to hear Arrested by Grace by Worship Mob. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. You're listening to Rhema CC and I'm Lindy Jones, your Sunday morning host. What a great day it is. It's such a joy this Sunday to spend with you as you go about your morning, preparing for a great day ahead. If you're in church worship or leadership, I can only assume that this is a pretty crazy time for you as you're listening in. So I'm saying a little prayer for you as I speak. If the day is kind of going all wrong, you must be doing something right. Stick to that truth and remember God is using you in this moment, in this hour, and on this day. Keep your eyes on him and watch how he leads. In the same way, we are trusting God with our marriages here at this radio station, on this Central Coast, in New South Wales and across the nation. This week is Marriage Week, and it's an opportunity for us to be educated on biblical marriage principles. We can consider statistics that alter or impact our view of marriage and ultimately challenge us to live out better and happier marriages. Earlier, we discussed the relevance of singleness and how it fits into Marriage Week. We talked about the realities of heartbreak when things don't go well in marriage and we're left to pick up the pieces from the mess behind. We talked about God's role in the restoration and discussed the freedom that can come from not being or never having been married. In this segment, we're examining more closely the beauty of marriage as we recognise it to be a unity between two people, a merging of two lives and a relationship to be honoured and treasured because it is designed by God. The leaving and cleaving that those in marriages are called to stems from Matthew 19:4-6. It says, "He answered, 'Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate.'" I would go as far as to say the need to leave and cleave means being prepared to recognise your own family of origin's ways, assess what you would like to integrate into your own marriage and family life, and consider whether it is going to be appropriate for you and your spouse. It means leaving behind the traditions or customs you were raised with, if it is going to become an issue between you and your other half. In my situation, it meant my husband had to consider whether he was willing to give up his whole life in another part of the world and what was known to him and what was about others instead of himself. From the moment we met, the idea that he might be called to love like Jesus and lay down his life for us, though not thankfully through death, but with the awareness that for us to be together was going to mean sacrifice. I am eternally grateful that he thought we were worth it and has continuously loved us in the same way since. But to flip this, it also means considering what is important to your spouse and encouraging their values, background and traditions into your home, because it is important to the person you love. We celebrate as many American traditions as I can be bothered each year, because combining two cultures and ensuring our kids know a little bit about both parts of the world that their heritage stems from is important to both of us. But it does keep us busy. Some years I'm just too exhausted to stop and recognise the 4th of July or Thanksgiving. Other years we're able to celebrate a little more freely because I'm feeling more alive in energy and ready to celebrate as a family or with friends. Merging two lives means considering how finances will work, how domestic duties will be attended to, what values are important to instill in the children that come from that marriage. It means dreaming together and working out how to chase those dreams. It means supporting the individual dreams of each person and finding a way for those to become a reality. In Christian marriage, it means praying for each other and together. It means stirring each other to chase God. It means offering a safe place and being a safe place. Proverbs 27:17 tells us that iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. In marriage, this can certainly be the goal at times too. In fact, husbands are called in Ephesians 5:25-29 to love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendour, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church. I've always thought, well, no, I haven't always thought. I was a bit of a feisty female there for a while, but after really comprehending scripture and understanding more of a godly marriage, I've come to see how compelling acting in the way God has requested of me as a wife actually is. If my husband is loving me as Christ loved the church, with the awareness to encourage me to be more like Jesus himself, why would I hesitate in following the first part of the challenges given to the married couples in Ephesians 5? To tell wives that they are encouraged to submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which is the Saviour. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. The idea of submission came with an apprehension and barrier for me initially. We are taught in the world today that women need to protect themselves in every way, inclusive of marriage. Whether financially, professionally or personally, there is little regard for women being okay to trust their spouse, so much that they can entirely surrender or submit to the path he believes they should go as husband and wife. It's almost frowned upon, and I admit I was probably guilty of seeing things the same way. That was until I felt safe enough to trust my husband would truly consider every aspect or outcome for the decision he and we have to make. I haven't always made life easy, and I have done that wifey thing out of frustration from time to time. You know, that need to add, I knew that didn't sound right, but of course I've done that. But I do recognise that every hurdle or decision that he's left to make for us, he does with the best intentions, and he would give up anything and everything to ensure I or our kids are okay. Husbands, I think your wives want to know they've been heard and that their thoughts and opinions are valued. Be gentle with them. Love them softly and passionately, and ensure they know you have their best interest through it all. And in response, I'm fairly certain that your wife will be comforted by the knowledge that you are placing her needs before anything else, and she'll be softened in heart to a point where she knows she is safe. There really is a beautiful reflection of the intimate connection between Christ and his people when we consider how marriages are more likely to thrive. Jesus literally gave his all to ensure we could have a real and genuine connection with him by going to the cross and surrendering all to God's undeniable plan of deep, deep love for us. We, in return, once we truly grasp what he has given up for us, want to ensure we give as much as we can back. And we surrender to his authority by grappling with his word, by praying through his prompting to do more in the world and to strive to be a better church. I think I'm learning something here. I've gone a little deep this morning, but marriage is founded and constructed by God, and I think that as we kick off this Marriage Week 2023, the best place to start is by acknowledging marriage for what it is. Keep praying for your marriages this week and beyond, and seek God further to know if there is anything new you're yet to cover to prove to your spouse that they are incredibly valuable to you. Sometimes we can't see what is hidden, and God will provide the insight and knowledge into the heart of our partner as we ask, because he knows them even better than we do. Keep praying for each other's marriages too. Before we go to our next song, Everything by Lincoln Brewster, I want to ask you, are you giving your everything to the person you love? What can you do better this marriage week? I'm Lindy Jones and you're listening to Rhema CC. We'll be back to talk marriage again shortly. Welcome back. You're tuning into 94.9 Rhema CC and I'm Lindy Jones. Thanks for joining us again this morning as we talk all things marriage. Yes, it's marriage week, and what a gift marriage is and can be. This week, I asked friends and associates to give me an idea of what they think is best about being married. Here's some of the responses. Having a wonderful partner, always having support in life, never boring, always something, having a purpose in life, always opportunities to practice loving better, support, knowing I always come first and nothing is expected in return. A friend added to this one, cooking. Her husband loves to cook and she loads it. That's quite a bonus. Another friend wrote, everything. Having a companion, cuddling in bed, sharing ideas, raising children, enjoying grandchildren. But above all, she wrote, my hubby's my absolute soulmate. He brings out the best in me. If I had to pick one, I'd say bringing out the best in each other. Then we have laughter. Another wrote, knowing that someone really knows you, having witnessed and supported you through all the wonderful and difficult situations that you face in life, and are proud of you and look on with love and adoration. I find this so humbling and safe. Leaves a place where you are completely yourself, and that is more than okay. And it is what is wanted. This sort of love is a reflection of God's unconditional love for us. Such a blessing and a gift. Friendship, love and loyalty were also noted. Another wrote, travelling the journey of life together and learning that perfection is not what is required from a good marriage. It's communication, forgiveness and acceptance, a great way to live out the fruits of the Spirit. The connection, trust, time we spend together, inside jokes, calling your best friend and talking about nothing on the way home from work. Most of all, the love, another wrote. Being able to be silly, vulnerable and intimate, and they still love you. And finally, having God as the centre of the marriage and watching each other grow in the Lord. Having strong and lasting relationship for my kids to grow up in and want that for themselves. I honestly love saying that I'm his wife and he's my husband. There's so many reasons why we can observe marriage as good. I can identify with so many of these that were just listed. Actually, probably all of them really. From the impact a healthy marriage can have on our kids to the knowledge that the person you love has your back and will support you. There are so many fantastic elements of marriage, and we have a lot to be thankful for if we are married. There's no denying, though, marriage is hard at times. The same beautiful aspects that are mentioned here can become challenges in your day-to-day. I know for my husband and I, when our third daughter was going through a bit of a rough time a few years ago, our parenting styles started to butt heads big time. I approached the scenario faced with a push to see through till tomorrow and build up resilience as we went. I may have come across a little bit harsher because I was pregnant at the time and hormones, but my husband was so much more gentle and accommodating to needs of the moment. He was probably over my inability to sit with my daughter, and he was just so calm. I was frustrated actually by his need to stop and ensure she had everything, precautionary and immediate, accommodated for. To be honest, I think that scenario probably triggered something in me that came from a sense of jealousy because for a while our attention had to shift to her and wasn't able to be as on us as a married couple. I use this example because while raising kids together is a truly amazing gift, as a married couple, there are times when the blessing of such an awesome gift and responsibility can become blurred or even deemed as a burden for a season because you're butting heads and trying to work out the best way you know how to get out of the situation. And your spouse may know a different way. So you either have to compromise and work it out together or learn to respect that you just have different ways of doing things and neither is wrong, they're just different. So wherever you are on the sliding scale of marriage right now, whether the points highlighted here by others as the best parts of marriage meet your understanding of the best parts of marriage, or you're finding the other side of the same point to be painful, annoying and frustrating, there is hope. Working it out together will bring us back to the verse we spoke of earlier. Iron sharpens iron. And we improve ourselves through the times we're forced to examine our actions or point of view and how we address various issues or life experiences. Iron sharpens iron. Before we hear Father's House by Corey Asprey, I have a few statistics related to marriage to share with you. According to the Australian Institute of Family Studies, in Australia, though our population has doubled, the number of marriages hasn't changed since the 1970s. The number of marriages registered in 2019 was actually lower than in 1970, with the number recorded at 113,815 in 2019, while in 1970 it was 116,066. The COVID pandemic saw a 30% decline in marriages across Australia, which makes perfect sense, with Victoria recording the lowest amount on a state-by-state comparison. The decrease in marriages has been linked to many demographic and social changes. Some of these include people finishing school at a later time and putting more priority into further education, increasing demands for a skilled workforce, increased workforce participation of women, especially mothers, the use of the pill, and also just a shift in society attitudes towards marriage. In 2020, though it was a funny year statistically due to the pandemic, out of the 78,989 registered marriages in 2020, 56,527 were first marriages for both partners. That's about 72%. For 17% of the marriages, it was a first marriage for one person, but not the other. For 12% of the marriages, it was not a first marriage for either party. These proportions are similar to those of recent years. In 2019, for example, 73% were first marriages for both, 16% a first marriage for one, and 11% remarriage for both. We tend to be getting married at an older age as well. In 2020, while very similar to the year prior, the average for men getting married was around 30.6 years, and women was 29.2. To compare the shift over the past 50 years, almost, it'll be 50 in 2024, the average age for men in 1974 was 20.9 years. So we've made a big shift there. What do I take from all of this? I take that marriage is still important. It is still to be pursued and couples are still choosing to say, I do. Even if the demographics or social changes indicate on the surface that marriage is irrelevant. If you're married, go back today to the reasons you said I do in the first place. Revisit it in your mind. What were you there for? Why did you walk down the aisle or wait for the bride to arrive at the end? And then reassess where you are today. Are you there for the same reasons or has something made a shift between you? Why do you choose to spend every day with the person you're committed to? Can I encourage you to tell them that they are still important to you today? Can I encourage you to tell them why they're still important? Because the more we go back to that moment at the altar, and the altar looks different for each of us, as I explained earlier, the reason or reasons we made the promise we did, the more likely we are able to hold on to that person with pride and thanks for the gift that they are. This week is about that, treasuring your special someone. You're listening to Rhema CC. I'm Lindy Jones, and this is Father's House by Corey Asprey. Good morning, I'm Lindy Jones, and you have started your Sunday morning with us here at Rhema CC. This is Marriage Week, and we're chatting all things marriage this morning. We've discussed the value of singleness amongst all the discussion of marriage too, from the ability to be available to God's calling as He requests, to the heartbreak and repair that only God can offer when marriage doesn't go to plan and we are left with scars. We've discussed the biblical foundation of marriage and the original and God-ordained plan for marriage. We've also talked statistics related to marriages in Australia, how we've changed as a society, and yet the relevance that marriage still has in our world today. I've shared the insights from friends and associates who have shared with me the best part or parts of being married. Some of these have included laughter and support, the love, support and respect from someone who loves with authenticity, a raw version of me, flaws and all. Others have said things like a teammate and partner in life and the best support ever. I note in this segment I use quotes from friends who have no religious affiliation, yet they view marriage in the same way that many of us do. Marriage is a gift, and this week is a great opportunity for each of us to acknowledge and validate the special person in our life, our spouse. So you might be thinking, how can I do that? Well, MarriageWeekAustralia.com offers some great ideas for bettering marriages, and they're a great place to start for individuals, couples and churches. Starting with ideas for dating your spouse, a renewal of vows, or just learning how to talk to each other again. There's always work to do. One book that is often encouraged for a great foundation to reconnecting with your spouse is The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. Knowing how to love your spouse in a way that really communicates care and sincerity can often be tricky. Well, this is a book that's been around for quite a while, but it keeps loving simple. Maybe you feel like you just can't do anything right by your spouse. Maybe you've been stacking the dishwasher and folding the laundry and your wife hasn't even noticed. Maybe you thought you were doing everything she would love or value, but instead you've been overlooked. Maybe you've been trying to organise a time to catch up with your spouse for lunch, but it always feels rushed and uncomfortable. Maybe he has to duck off after a few minutes and you feel rejected or abandoned in those moments. Chances are you're speaking completely different love languages, and Gary Chapman helps you to break down those love languages as barriers and encourage more communication in the way that both you and your spouse are really going to hear one another. This week, you might like to think about the 5 ways you communicate your love to your spouse and ask, do I do this because it means more to me, or do I do this because it really affirms my spouse and ensures that they know how special they are to me? Now, these 5 simply are quality time, words of affirmation, gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. These are the 5 areas to work on as highlighted by Chapman. And they are definitely worth exploring together as a couple, but also on your own. More than anything this week, I encourage you to lay your marriage before God and ask Him to show you any areas to be explored, challenged, or affirmed. And love like Jesus. Love like Jesus. What a transformation we can make when we love with authenticity and depth. It's a depth that goes beyond ourselves and places the need of another person before our own. Strive for that and pray without ceasing. I want to end this week with a quote by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. You can actually find this quote on Marriage Week Australia website too, but I think it sums up marriage and why it is worth celebrating. God is guiding your marriage. Marriage is more than your love for each other. It has a higher dignity and power, for it is God's holy ordinance, through which He wills to perpetrate the human race till the end of time. In your love, you see only your 2 selves in the world, but in marriage, you are a link in the chain of the generations. which God causes to come and to pass away to his glory and calls into his kingdom. In your love, you see only the heaven of your own happiness, but in marriage, you are placed at a post of responsibility towards the world and mankind. Your love is your own private possession, but marriage is more than something personal. It is a status, an office, just as it is the crown and not merely the will to rule that makes the king, so it is marriage and not merely your love for each other that joins you together in the sight of God and man. There's some huge stuff in that. I hope you have been truly blessed this week. I hope you have an awesome marriage week and that this Sunday is a great opportunity to really begin your exploration, your opinions, your feelings associated with marriage. I'll be here next week and I can't wait to join you once again then. Spend today in awe. In the meantime, you're about to hear Spend a Life by David Dunn. Working on your marriage and valuing those in your life is indeed a great way to spend yours. Be blessed and I'll meet you back here next Sunday. See you then.